Hey everyone, I'm back again. I'm going to talk about Trapped in a Dating Sim Volume 1. For those of you who don't know, this novel currently has an ongoing anime. It's about 8 episodes right now. So yeah, pretty much I want to talk about how this and the anime kind of slightly differ. They're about the same, but there's a few key differences that, the anime didn't go over. So yeah, the anime covers this novel in about 5 episodes. Yeah, 5 episodes. Um, Truthfully, I feel like the anime may stop around the end of the second book, but we're gonna talk about this one this time. Maybe next video I'll get into this one. Well, I will be getting into this one next video. But for starting off, yeah, the first episode of the anime pretty much covers the prologue and chapter one of this book. So, for more or less, the anime went through it kind of quickly. It's mostly the same, but there's a few differences that I want to talk about. Mainly, all right, the prologue starts off with, you know, telling about his life before he got reincarnated into the game world. So more or less, in the prologue, the difference with that and the anime kind of just quickly went into him being reincarnated, but it didn't really get into like the reasons why he was playing the game, as opposed to the novel. In the anime, it was just said that he was playing the game because of his sister, and she had something on him. But in reality, what happened was he was a Japanese businessman who ended up having some free time, a free weekend, because he was swamped with work. So he cleared it out, and he ended up having some time for himself. With that said, his sister, she would come over sometimes, and she was very much into a lot of these types of otome games and a lot of BL stuff, and more or less she had him to play the game for her because of something that happened. In the anime, they did not go over what happened and why he started playing the game, but what really happened was because she came over to his house, she used to leave a lot of her stuff there, her BL stuff, her otome games and whatever. So what happened was his mother came over one time and to clean up, clean his house, whatever. In doing so, she found all of the otome games and the BL stuff. And what happened was she thought he was a pervert because, why was a man with, you know, things, content, books and stuff like this with boys love more or less, two boys. Why would he have so much of it? So what happened was he got in trouble with his parents and a whole, they really thought he was perverted and something was wrong with him. So what happened was the sister told him she would clear things up with the parents if he cleared the game for her because the game was really, really hard. The prince and his entourage in this game, they were pretty weak. They all had problems. They weren't really the best of characters. So, what he did was to more or less purchase in-game items that made the game easier, which all of that was, covered in the anime. But here's another thing that wasn't covered. After he cleared the game, he came to a realization that his sister was texting him, and not only that, before I get into that, the sister went on a vacation with her friend. Now, he did give her some money, but he realized how was it that she was able to go on this vacation and do all of this stuff with the money that he gave her. knowing that it wasn't enough to cover the vacation and all of that. So he realized his sister had asked the parents for money to get a license. Now she used that money to go on the vacation, and then she took his money for pocket money. Now he realized that, and then he had already finished the game, and but he was like, you know what, I'm gonna get revenge on her. So he sent his mother a long email with all the evidence, the pictures of that she was taking, the receipts of the vacation and everything, and he sent it to the mother. And then at that, he said he got his revenge. He got up. He's like, all right, let me go out. I'm starting to feel hungry. But he had already realized that something was wrong with him. He wasn't feeling all that great. But he still went out. He wanted to get something to eat. He went to a diner. So by doing that, he ended up falling over. And I mean, they showed it in the anime. He fell over. He fell down some stairs. He hit his head. He died. When doing that, he reincarnated into the next life, which is the Otome game. And from there, that's where his life started over. Now, another key difference between this novel and the anime is in this new world, they don't really mention it in the anime, but he has other siblings. The only sibling that they really show is his older sister, Jenna. And they did show his older brother in the anime when he first reincarnated, when he was explaining everything to him about how the world works. And then it hit him. He was like, wait a minute. I'm in that game that I played. So what they don't really show you in that anime, they did show them in episode 5. But he has other family members. He has the older brother that they showed in the anime. He has the older sister, Jenna. But he also has a younger sister and a younger brother. Now, the older brother has a bigger how do I say it? He has a bigger presence in the novel than in the anime. In the anime, after that part, they don't really show him again, but he's more or less a third year student in this school. He went to the school 2 years ahead of 2 years ahead of the main character, and he is mentioned quite a few times. He's gonna come back and take over for the father. The older brother is gonna take over the father's barony after he graduates and whatnot. Now, here's another difference with the light novel and the anime. It kind of goes into more detail about as he was growing up and why he went to get these treasures that to enroll in the school. Before Let me rewind back for a second. All right, in chapter 1, it talks about his life and growing up. He kind of grew up kind of quick. They kind of just glossed over it. They talked about it like they did in the anime. But what happened was once he got to a certain age, since he was the third child, he was the third son. Well, not third son, but he was the third child. The only two that really mattered was the first son and the second son. But since he was the third child, as in he had the older brother, older sister than him, he's the third son. So for that world, the third son is pretty much meaningless. Only the first two matter. So since he's the third son, they wanted to marry him off his stepmother. Let's get into his family. Let me first get into his whole family. All right, his family is made up of him, his parents, his older brother and sister, his younger brother and sister. Then he has a stepmother who has a son and a daughter. So he has a stepbrother and a stepsister. So that's where he's the third son. He has two older brothers, more or less, the stepbrother and his brother. Now, here's what happened to him. pretty much the stepmother was going to send him off to get married to an older 50-year-old woman. Now, there was a scheme behind that they didn't really get into in the anime. They just, more or less put it as he's the third son, he's not needed. We only need the first two. But what really happened was the stepmother, not officially, but she was a part of this one group where they take the third sons and higher, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, how many sons you got, they take them away and marry them to older women. Now, when they do that, they more or less become slaves to them, and they would more or less send them off to wars to die. And when they die, since they're still aristocratic, they're part of whatever barony, viscount, whatever. They would earn accolades, which would then get get them um it would lead those accolades would lead the family to getting compensation for the death of their child. So what they more or less was doing was sending the sons out to die and collect the rewards, and they would keep doing that over and over again. That was one of the main reasons why he was like, "Screw that! I'm not getting married. I want to go enroll into the academy." So he set out to more or less earn enough money because even though he was part of a barony, his his family was pretty poor. They could barely afford to take care of the barony itself because the way it works is once you part of the higher class, you would have to send in reparations or whatever to the king and all of that. How it is in that other world. They went over it. So now another difference was aside from what I just said about the whole sending him off. Um, his little adventure that he had to get the riches that he had in to enroll in the school. It was a slightly longer in the novel. They kind of went into a little detail about when he got there, how his ship was sucked into the island, the floating islands, because this world is made up of a lot of floating islands that more or less, if you find a floating island, you more or less make it big for yourself because it's all about adventuring and whatnot. People see adventurers as very high class. So it goes into more detail. He finds the island that had the stuff that he bought from the game, more or less cheats. So he finds it. It goes into how he he had to carry a whole bunch of supplies and stuff. The size of the island when he got there, how he had to sleep, whatever, all the way up until he got the ship and all of that stuff. So that's more or less the same as the anime. He pretty much gets to the ship and then he he has to fight an AI, a robot. He ends up beating the robot and then he claims the ship as his own and then he comes back three months later to his family. Now, here's another difference between the anime and the manga. The anime and the novel. um, he comes back 3 months, but if for any of you who have watched the anime, if you remember, they talked about how it's been 3 months and he hasn't come back, and he pretty much probably is dead. In the novel, that same thing happened, but remember, I said his family wasn't really in the anime. His younger brother, the stepmother, decided, well, before I say what I'm gonna say, another reason why he actually went off adventuring was for his younger brother. Now, why he did it for his younger brother is what I'm gonna say right now. The stepmother decided that since he's been gone for 3 months, he's most likely dead. she's gonna take the younger brother, who was only 9 at the time, to become the husband of, the older woman. Now, remember what I said about how more or less um the whole thing that they was doing about taking sons third and higher, fourth, whatever, to get married and then die. That's more or less what he was fighting against for him and his younger brother. The anime didn't cover that. Now, his younger brother bursts into the room as they're talking and says, older brother's back. He's on some whatever, this crazy looking shit. So everybody comes out, and then, he comes back. He has all his riches so that he can enroll in the school. Um, Another thing that they skipped over is a very minor part, but the stepmother still tried to say that he had to hand over all the riches, still to try and send him off. But then he went into the whole laws of everything, and they were like, he signed up as an adventurer. He found all of this on his own, so it's his. You have no stake in this, even if you know you're the stepmother, you're the head of this family, which I didn't mention. But in this world, females more or less rule. And I'm gonna get into something a little later in this video, but females more or less rule in this world. Now, she was saying that more or less he used his parents' money, because he did ask them for help to help him set up to get this adventure started. So she was more or less saying, since he did that, everything belongs to the father, and whatever belongs to the father belongs to her. So, like I said, he corrected her, and he was like, no, because I became an adventurer, all my findings are my own. So I already went to the guild. I gave them their percentage. Everything else is mine. So you have no stake in this. So all that went on. He managed to get enough money to enroll in the school. And yeah, that's more or less where it really starts off in the other world. Now, going forward from chapter 2 onwards, this book was 11 chapters long. It's more or less the same as the anime for those of you who watched it. There were some differences. Um, from chapter 2 onwards, it goes on to talk about him enrolling in the school, his everyday life, him meeting the main characters, the princes, and another character, Angelica, which was the prince's fiance, the prince, his entourage, um, Olivia, the main character, which is right here, Olivia. And yeah, it was pretty much the same. Um, Chapter 2 talks about, him getting into the school. Here's a difference that wasn't in the anime. There was an introduction in the school, everybody came in. One thing he did that was different was he noticed this one girl called Marie in the auditorium when everything was going on, when it was introducing everybody to the school. The moment he looked at her, something didn't feel right about her, and he was like, I don't like this girl. Something pisses me off when I look at her. Now, that didn't happen in the anime. But it goes on. He starts taking his classes. Everybody kind of felt like he's that one guy that, there's so many rumors about. He went on an adventure, got his own riches, became his own baron. By becoming his own baron, he kind of separated himself from his family, because now he was his own baron versus being under his father. So he ended up becoming something for himself. It also, before they arrived at the school, they talked about him, his older brother Nix, and his older sister Jenna. They enrolled in this school. Sister's 1 year above him. She's in the second year. His brother's 2 years. His brother more or less is trying to get through school easily, try and get somebody to marry. The whole point of this school is, you know, for all those noble type people to find a marriage partner. Now, um, they do all of that. He takes his classes. They do the whole tea ceremony thing. He hated that at first, but whatever happened between him and his instructor, they didn't show it in the anime. They didn't really explain it in the novel. It was like a jump cut. He just got intrigued with the whole tea ceremony thing, so he started doing that. He was trying to invite a whole bunch of different girls. Um, didn't work out, and at that time when he was doing the tea ceremonies, he ended up meeting Olivia, the the main character of the game story, and he felt bad for her. So what he did was he took her in and he gave her tea and whatnot. You realize that he used to call her before he reincarnated. He used to call her this tricky woman who had other agendas and whatnot. But he realized she was actually really sweet. So they got to know each other. He was like he wished more females in the school was like her because, like I said, the world is more female dominated. So all the females would look down on people. But she was a really nice girl. So then he started to realize, okay, this is the main character. She's probably getting along well with the princes and whatnot. But then he realized something felt a little off. And then he learned about the whole Marie character and how she's more or less taking the place of the main character, Olivia, in the story. Now, it's the same, everything goes on. We get to Angelica, who's who was the antagonist of the game. In this world, because Marie took the place of Olivia, everything that happened, the prince was her fiance. Now Marie self-inserted herself in between all of that. She more or less copied everything from the game to be beside the prince and his entourage. Now, this is where they have a class on adventuring and they get into a dungeon and you know Olivia ended up going with Leon, who is the main character, Reincarnated. That's his name. I'm sorry I didn't get into say his name before, but it more or less from there, he's with Olivia because nobody likes her. He's more or less her only friend. Nobody likes her because she's a peasant, more or less. They feel like she don't belong in the school. Um, yeah. They go on, the trip. They were the lead because everybody felt like since he was an adventurer, he had experience. He should be able to go through the dungeon easy. So he was the lead for the prince and his entourage, which was behind. You know, him and Olivia was the first group, and then the prince and everybody else was behind them. So they go through the dungeon, whatever. Um, like I said, Angelica, she didn't like Marie because Marie was sticking too much to the prince, and you know that's her fiance. She didn't understand why this this girl. Now Marie differs from the main character a little bit in the sense that the main character, like I said, she has no noble background. Marie is a viscount's daughter. Now, in terms of that, being a viscount is too low to be in, with the prince. There's a whole class system and ranks and stuff, and depending on your rank, you can't really socialize with. Well, not really, not socialize, but you can't get together with somebody too hot who outranks you like a whole lot. So the prince was too high ranked. I believe they said in the novel the rankings go: the king is at rank 1, the prince is at upper rank 2, and a viscount is something like rank rank 6 or rank 5. I can't really remember, but it's down. It's low. So she's low on the hierarchy. So she more or less self inserts herself. She's getting close to the prince. She has her own agenda. She's we come to find out that she's also a reincarnated person, just like the main character, and she's following the game. She's every event that happens in the game. What happens is when the event is about to happen, and Olivia is there, she would make Olivia leave the scene, and then she would self-insert herself into said scene to play the role that Olivia had. So she ended up fooling the prince and his entourage into believing, this is who they really love. Whereas she just was trying, her whole main goal was trying to live an easy life in this new world. If she got in with the prince and his entourage, being the prince and all that, he's rich, everything would just, come to her. But there's a key difference between her and Marie. I mean, Marie and Olivia that they start to get into in volume two, but I'll just say it here. The key difference between Olivia and Marie is that Olivia is supposed to become the saint of that world. They do say this a couple of times in the first novel. They said it in the anime a few times. That's the main difference. With her becoming the saint, she jumps ranks from being a commoner all the way up to being able to marry the prince and all of that. Marie is nothing. She's just a Viscount's daughter. Like I said, she's ranked like 6. She's too low to be with that. So she didn't really think it through in the fact that she just thought, hey, I'll, get in with the prince and all of that, and my life will be great. Now, she does eventually try. Well, let me just try and rather than going through the story as a whole, let me just try and keep it to volume one. Um, she does. Okay, yeah. Angelica more or less had a fight with Marie when they got to the dungeon. There was a whole argument, and the prince stood up for her, whatever. The main character was like, "I'm just gonna stay out of it," but something is off because the person that should be there is Olivia, not Marie. In that whole scenario. So they, go through the dungeon. They do whatever, get materials, ores, and all of that to earn money. Um, the Then they're attacked by these bug type monsters. Easily dispatched. Um, the the prince and his entourage, they take care of everything. The main character takes care of what's in front. The prince gets hurt for a brief. One of the enemies just scratched him. Marie ends up having something similar to Olivia, which is healing powers. Healing powers are very rare in that world. So, you know, she ends up healing the prince. She tells him to keep it silent because when she healed him, he looked at her and said, "Wait, you can heal?" And then she told him to quiet, more or less. Which I guess in the later volumes, like I said, I'll go into that later. But I'm guessing because of the healing power, that's one of the things needed to become the saint. I'm not too sure yet. I'm not that far into the series. Novel wise, I am reading volume 2 right now. I'm probably gonna make the next video about volume 2. But yeah, we go, get past that, and then now there's gonna be a grand party in the novel about for all the students, just to get them acquainted with the school and that whatnot, and to more or less flex the power of the capital to show like, yo, we can really do all of this, this grand party, whatever. So Leon goes to the party, trying to get somebody he could get engaged to. Everybody goes. He meets Olivia there. Um, It's this big gaudy party. Everybody's dressed up. Olivia, being the commoner that she can't afford any clothes or anything, so she just comes in her uniform. Marie does the same thing, but again, she's doing all of this based on what happened in the game. So Angelica is there. She's pissed because Marie is with the prince and his entourage. Now, what happens is Angelica gets really pissed off, so she ends up challenging Marie to a duel. In doing so, at this point in the story, Angelica, her reputation has really fallen down because of the whole Marie thing and how the prince keeps rejecting her every time they meet up. And, so all her followers, everything kind of abandoned her. She's by herself, Angelica. So Marie, at this point, she's thinking, okay, this is gonna go like how the game went, and then Angelica's gonna be more or less, she's gonna shame herself because, okay, she challenged her to a duel. Now, in the story of the game, what happens is Angelica breaks one key rule that they established was that you can't have outside help to come fight the duel for you. More or less, the duel between two females, they'll get a proxy. For Marie, the proxy was the prince and his entourage. So she had five people. Angelica had nobody. Like I said, at this point in the story, her she's pretty much at her lowest. Nobody's following her anymore. Everybody's trying to keep distance. Even though she's more or less a duke's daughter, so her status is up there. But at this point, with the prince rejecting her and everything, she goes down. Now, Marie has the prince and his entourage. Angelica has nobody. She would have, if the story had continued the way it was supposed to go, she would have gotten outside help, which you're not supposed to do because the way a duel works in the school is they feel like it's a children's thing. It's child versus child, so let the children handle it. Don't bring adults into it. What Angelica would have done was bring somebody outside of the school, which is a big no-no, which would have led to her, her full decline. She would have been shipped off to some backward order noble to get married, and she would have had a miserable life from then on. Now, this is where the main character steps in. At this point in the story, he's pretty much fed up with everything. He's been trying his hardest, trying to get a marriage partner and whatnot. He figured, screw this school, screw all of this. I'm gonna just step in and become Angelica's proxy, so I can give it to the prince and his entourage, because I don't like them. I don't like them. I don't like Marie, whatever. So he comes up, when Angelica was looking around for somebody to help her to duel, and nobody stepped in for her. So he steps up and he's like, I'll do it. And then this is the first time Marie sees him. Now, remember before I said when he first saw Marie, when they first got into the school, he saw her, he looked at her and he said, I don't like her. Something about her really pisses me off. Now this time, on the flip side, now this is the first time Marie sees him. And as soon as she sees him, she says more or less the same thing. Who is this guy? He pisses me off just looking at him. Something about him just doesn't feel right. Now, for those of you who haven't come to realize yet, the main character reincarnated from the past world. She also reincarnated from the past world. But that's his sister, brother and sister. They kind of resonated with seeing each other the first time. They both instinctively hated each other off right away. So now she's like, who is this background mob character that's just coming out here and ruining everything for her? This isn't how the story should have went. But she failed to realize she already messed up the story by self-inserting herself. Now a whole lot of events that were supposed to happen is happening out of order. Things are progressing faster, and more or less the story is going in a whole different direction. She doesn't realize this. Leon had already realized this, and he's by doing this, he's hoping he can correct everything and get Olivia back into that spot that she's supposed to be. But the duel happens. He ends up, becoming Angelica's proxy. Everything, the, the duel goes on. Now, everybody in the school hated him because it's like, who are you to go up against the prince and his entourage, being a baron being lower than Marie being a viscount. Baron is below them, so he would be like a fourth or fifth rank. So now he he went up against them knowing full well that he can beat the hell out of them. So he set up the duel. He asked, how you want to do this. Um, they decided on dueling it out in armors, which is these giant Gundam-like things. Um, he went up against all of them. Um, he took bets. More or less, they were betting on him. Everybody in the school more or less bet against him, and that was one thing that um he was counting on. They took bets against him. Everybody in school bet against him, except for two. He did make two friends in the school. Now in the anime, the friends had bet on him, but what in the they did bet on him in the novel, but there's a little difference here on how they bet. In the anime, they just automatically bet on him because they was forced to take the side of the princes because again, the whole thing about the school is trying to get married and whatnot. They didn't want to stand out and be against because that would look bad on them. But secretly, they did bet on him in the anime. In the novel, they bet on him, but they bet on him because he told them to bet on him. What happened was there was a little thing where after the whole, the duel, not after the duel, but after when the challenge was issued, and he stepped in for Angelica, everybody more or less went against him and they vandalized his room and they had his two friends do, some vandalization to his room as well. Now, that for him, he understood it. He didn't really take it against, take it as a heart. He understood the whole situation, and he was like, okay, um, it's fine. If I was in their position, I'd do the same thing. I have to. At the end of the day, I have to look out for myself. I can't. This will impact my future, and I can't, hold it against them if they're gonna go, be against me. But I know they're still on my side, so he ended up passing them, in the halls, and he told them secretly, "Hey, whatever happens, bet on me for this upcoming duel." So they ended up betting on him. Now the duel happens, and he more or less stomps all of them. It was an easy win, very easy. Now again, everything happens more or less the same as the anime, and he beats them. He beats the prince. A little difference with it was the whole he talked like he did talk down to them in the anime, but in the novel he kind of went further and he kind of put it in the prince's face that how are you gonna put aside Angelica, the Duke, and go out with Marie, you and your whole entourage. Now with the way the world works, you're the prince, right? You're let's say she does get pregnant and she has a child, right? How would you know that the child is yours, being that she's dating all five of you and the other four? Now, there's no way of confirming who the child is in that world, who the child's, father is in that world. So if all of you are going out with her and let's say she gets pregnant, how would you claim for that child to be yours? Now, with that said, he says that, and then he goes on to say, you know, that can be used against you later on with all political and whatever. They can use that against you, be like that child isn't yours, and it could start a whole big thing, blow up against him. So he gets into it with the prince. He beats the prince, and then he more or less sets himself up to leave the school because he's fed up with everything. He'll leave the school. He'll pay everybody off to not kill him because he did go up against the prince, which nobody would actually do. Nobody in their right mind would do. So he pays off Angelica's family to look out for him and keep him and his family safe. So you know that happens. They take care of it. Angelica's brother and her father more or less take interest in him because they like not only did he show which families which were supposed to be allies kind of moved away from Angelica and whatnot, but he's an interesting guy to really sit back and scold the prince like that. That's how his retainers, the four other guys, were supposed to be with the prince, but they ended up all falling for Marie. So they took interest in him, and then it goes on to Angelica. It became like a summer break type thing, and Angelica was pretty much feeling down because she ended up talking with the prince. The whole stakes of the duel was if she won, Marie would have to stay away from the prince. But if Marie won, then she can, date the five of them. So Leon ended up winning. They went on this vacation. The Duke sent Angelica with Leon to go stay at his barony for the time being for the vacation, just to recover because she had a talk with the prince after that, and the prince was like, "You never really loved me. Um, it was just your role." So she went on to she did love him, but he felt like she didn't. Now Prince goes on to say, what's my favorite food, and then she says the food, but then he's like, no, you're wrong. My favorite food was these skewers that the commoners eat, and he always felt like if he told it to Angelica, that she would look down on him because why would you like this type of food? But Marie, going based off her knowledge of the game, already knew that. So everything that she's been doing kind of was based on the game. So he was like, no, Marie instantly knew from when I met her that this was my favorite food. And, he goes on to say, Marie knows things about me that, you don't know. But again, it's just the game knowledge. She played through the game. So, yeah, about Marie, here's another thing that was a little different. The anime doesn't really go in to say that it's his sister yet, but the novel more or less confirmed it was his sister. Um, in the novel, it goes on to say that after the main character died, remember when I said that he sent that email to his mother? The mother found out and she read the email. She got mad at Marie. They more or less disowned Marie because um, more or less they felt like it was her fault that he died. So she got disowned. She ended up getting married. Then her husband left her. She more or less had a pretty rough life after that in the other world. The whole thing after everybody found out what happened. So yeah, we find out Marie is the sister. So now everything went against how the game went, and now the prince has been disowned after the duel. He is no longer the crown prince; he's just the prince. So he has no stakes to the throne or anything. The others have been disowned from their houses, so now they're all pretty much broke. Her life has already changed, not the way that she wanted. So you know that's pretty much it. They go the to Leon's barony, Angelica, him, and Olivia, and they more or less, they spend the time there. It was a little longer in the novel than it was in the anime. In the novel, in the anime they only really showed the hot springs part, but they went to the hot springs. Angelica was learning about, how he ran everything on his island, about how, it was a nice place. She sat back and, she was really learning how to do agriculture and all of that. They really went into it more in the novel. Another thing was in let's jump back a bit, back to the duel. Um, in the fourth fight against the main character and one of the entourage, Jilk, the one with the green hair. Um, he planted a bomb on the main character's armor. He used the main character's older sister Jenna to do it. Now, in the light novel, Jenna more or less got a slap on her wrist, I should say, seeing as how she kind of almost killed her brother by setting a bomb on his cockpit. But the armor that he has is more or less a cheat armor. It's stronger than all the others. So the bomb didn't do anything. But like I said in the novel, she more or less got a slap on the wrist. The only thing that happened was when she got back home, she was forced to do some work, more or less, like help in the fields and whatnot. So yeah, it was him, his older brother, and Jenna. They all came back for the summer break. They had Angelica and Olivia with them. And that was pretty much it. He was expecting to be expelled from school after fighting the prince and his entourage, but like I said, Angelica's father and brother stood in for him, and they actually ended up raising his rank, which he didn't want. He wanted to be expelled and be left to his own barony. He could be under his father and just live his life leisurely after that. But it didn't work out. He ended up being ranked up. He went up a rank, and you know he was let back into the school. So after all of that, he's back at the school. He's pissed off. Why am I still here? I did all of that to the prince. I'm here. They upped my rank. This is not how it was supposed to go. So now he's back at the school. Now he's friends with Angelica and Olivia, and that's pretty much where the volume ends. Volume one, the first five. That was the first five episodes of the anime. The only other difference was there's a bonus chapter at the end of this book that more or less goes on to Luxion. Luxion being the AI program that follows him. It more or less, you know, had it talked about how Leon more or less told Luxion that the world that they're in right now is based on an otome game, and how he can see that he does make some sense because a lot of the things in the world, for instance, the whole females are above men in standing, but yet it kind of contradicts the way the whole world works itself, in the fact that men still control baronies and all of that. More or less, the world itself is made still revolves around men, but females are at the top. It kind of contradicts itself. Like everything the men still have to do, but females are still above them. So there's like little contradictions here and there that he can pick out, and he's like, yeah, something is, really off about it. But that's pretty much where the book ends, and that was the whole of Volume One. Volume One being what 408 pages. They adapted it in 5 episodes. I would say they did an okay job. It was pretty much the same with some minor differences. Like I said, they had his family was more prevalent in this novel. I mean, I kind of summarized everything. I didn't really go into too much detail about everything, but that was pretty much it. So with that said, that was the whole of Volume One. If you wanna talk more about it with me, like I said, you could join my Discord. I'll have it in the description. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I'm really gonna talk about today. So with that, in the next video, I'll move on to book number two. And in reading book number two, I'll be ahead of the anime at this point. Um, I'll go into differences for what the anime is up to at this point. I'll probably start talking about it up until episode 9. So like I said, right now it's only episode 8 is up, but I'll probably have the video for this up after episode 9 comes out. So yeah, like I said, if you wanna talk more about it with me, you're free to join my Discord. Um, you know, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. If you liked it, just comment. Let me know how you felt about it. Otherwise, thank you again. I'll see you next time. Bye.